we should just turn over our destiny to these big tech companies, or whether we, the people, should have something to say about how this develops and how you're protected from harms, and whether that's, as a utility ratepayer, not having to pay for a data center, or whether it's a parent knowing that there's going to be protections for children. I think a lot of people, have a lot of concerns about some of the things that could be on the horizon. And so we want to approach this in the state of Florida a very intelligent way, but in a way that's putting Floridians first. I mean, ultimately, we got to care about the well-being of our people. Not worried about the profits of the Magnificent Seven. They're doing just fine, and they will do just fine. But we've got to make sure that our folks are doing well. So joining us here today is Megan Garcia and her husband, Sewell Stetzer. They're going to talk about their story, and it's a very impactful story. We also have from deep in the heart of Texas, Mandy Furness. She's an advocate and mother to a special needs son, and I really want to thank her for coming, all the way over for this roundtable. And then Major George Pereira, commander of Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office, Cybercrimes Bureau. So we recently proposed a Bill of Rights for Floridians vis-a-vis artificial intelligence. And, some of the things that we've been, trying to think about is just, if we went back 15 or 20 years, there may have been some things that policymakers probably could have done better about the rise of social media, about some of these other things. They gave really significant protection in Congress to all these tech companies with this Section 230. It's had implications, and you can argue that there were good things that came of that, but clearly there were bad things about that. But I think the one thing we learned is just say, like, okay, let them do their thing, and that's all that's going to matter. That really hasn't worked, right? And so we're all about technologies that can enhance our experience as Floridians and Americans and as human beings. But what we don't want to do is be subsidizing or put a thumb on the scale for technologies that are going to supplant the human experience, or to try to take over things that, and you'll even hear some people say, oh, the AI is going to run everything. We're not even going to be able to control it. No, that ain't working. We the people are in control of our own destiny, and we're happy to harness technologies to help us, navigate that destiny, but we are not going to turn over the reins to things that we cannot control. So we proposed a number of things that I think are very well received. I mean, one is just, and we have not had the construction of a hyperscale data center in Florida, but some of these things, like Meta has one in Louisiana that's the size of Manhattan. And a hyperscale data center is using enough power that'd be the equivalent of a city of 500,000 people. And in some of the bigger ones, maybe even more than that. You also have a lot of water consumption. You have a big geographic footprint, which has environmental concerns. And so you have all these things. And, our point of view is, you should not have to pay one dime more in utility costs, water, power, any of this stuff, because of this. These are some of the most wealthy companies in the history of humanity. They should not be able to offload costs onto people that are already strapped with high costs in other areas. And so, making sure that Floridians are protected against that, I think is really, really important. And I know a lot of people agree with that. The thing about the data centers is there's not really a big economic impact once they're created. Like, if it's constructed, people can make some money doing that. Obviously, there may be some jobs that can go. But once it's done, it employs like a half dozen people. And these tech companies will likely bring in foreigners to do that on some visa, or they're not going to hire from your local community. That's just not what they do. So, from that, I think a lot of these communities are not supporting the construction in their area when they go before these boards now, because they're thinking like, okay, it's sucking a lot of resources, but is this really something that we need in our community? Is it something that's going to benefit the community? And by and large, this is across party lines. I think people are saying no dice on that. So I do think I think there's been a big sea change in how people have thought about that just in the last 6 to 9 months. And it may be that some of the protections we have, end up being moot because it's just not something that's going to get any traction in Florida, period. But at the end of the day, this is not something that you should ever have to pay for, no subsidy, none of that, and we're going to make that very clear. We also, and this is something we've already dealt with, this idea of deep fakes, where they can use your likeness and your image and put it in certain situations, and it can be in, unfortunately, in situations where you have sexually explicit videos and images that are created, including of minor. So we did a bill actually this year to provide some recourse. We had a minor female, was a high school student, and this happened to her, sexually explicit. And, you know, my view is, you know, that is absolutely something that can be very harmful to people. It's very hard to tell what's real or what's not real anymore. You know, there'll be videos that are put out online and you see it and you're like, oh man, and then, you know, occasionally people will respond, oh no, that's AI, but like honestly, you really wouldn't necessarily know. And I would imagine as we get further down the road on this, it's gonna be very, very difficult to determine that. Well, should your life be turned upside down for something that you had nothing to do with and people are just doing that? This could be very, very harmful to people, and we want to make sure that we're providing protections and recourse if that happens. We also don't want our state or local government agencies to utilize any Chinese-created AI tools with respect to American data. You know, China harvests a lot of data with things like TikTok and everything. Now, we don't use that in government, but it is something that's used a lot by consumers throughout American society. And it's interesting, you know, the TikTok in America is a lot different than the TikTok they let in China. I mean, like, you know, all the negative of TikTok in America, they don't do that, and that's not what they do. So that's important. We also want to make sure that people are not able to use your name, image, and likeness without your consent for monetization or things of that nature. And look, the average person, maybe this won't necessarily be something that is, but for some people, it could absolutely be something that is done. We believe that there should be transparency to consumers, and that there should be a notice that they are interacting with artificial intelligence. You know, we can't allow the situation to have this present itself as a human being, either on the phone or in written correspondence. We also want to prohibit any entities from using these AI chatbots as, quote, licensed therapy or mental health counseling. Or imitating a licensed professional. The reality is these are machines, and honestly, they get a lot of things wrong. There's some things they can do and synthesize and spit something out pretty quickly, and sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's not. But clearly, to hold yourself out as if you can do that is totally unacceptable. And I think you'll hear a little bit why that's important as well. We want to provide parents with controls for minors, so that they're able to access conversations that children are using with our AI platforms. We want them to be able to set parameters for accessibility for minors and require notification to parents if their child exhibits concerning behavior. You know, some people will say, oh, well, you know, who cares what big tech does? It's the parent's responsibility. Well, yeah, of course it's the parent's responsibility, but the reality is the way this permeates our society, it's easy to do, right? And so providing some of this framework and structure is a way to really enhance parents' rights and make their rights more effective in how this is done. And these kids, you know, my kindergartner, she can grab my wife's phone and they know how to swipe, and she can watch my wife put in her code, and she knows the code, and then she can do these things, and you got to take it away. But it's like, you know, sometimes it's hard, right? And as they do other things. Now, you know, Florida, we were one of the first to ban cell phone use in classrooms. And when I did that, I think MSNBC said that was an example of rising fascism in America, which I thought was odd. Now everyone knows that's effective, so all the other states have done it, or a lot of them have done it across the political spectrum. So now they say, oh yeah, you know, that's right, and they kind of forget that they were saying that. But basically, you know, we did that because, you know, you can't really learn if your face is buried in that, and they're doing they're doing a lot of other stuff, which isn't, quite frankly, healthy. Also wasn't good for teachers. So you know, we've been able to do that, which is great. But the reality is, you know, they're at school. They do activities. They do all this other stuff. The notion that a parent is going to be able to have 100% control all the time, it's tough, especially as they become teenagers. So this can be something, you know, that's very good. Now, my wife always says, you know, our kids are kindergarten, second, third, so they're not even at the age yet, but the extent they want a phone, they get a flip phone, not a smartphone, because you know the smartphone, at least the flip, if there's an emergency, you have it. So we'll see how that goes over when the time comes. We also want to prohibit companies from selling or sharing any personal identifying information with third parties and ensure data privacy protections. You know, if you're doing this chat on like ChatGPT or Gemini or I mean, what is happening with all that? Do you think that that's just disappearing in the ether? No, they're monetizing that. I mean, all this data is something that they're harvesting and monetizing. And for some of these companies, obviously they want to sell advertising. You know, for others, they want to be able to leverage it in other ways. But that's something that's very, very real. And I think a lot of people are like, you know, you type in and, you know, you ask a question, you know, what is the GDP of Chile or something, and you think it's innocuous, like that is being stored. So someone's going to know that someone on that phone, you know, asked about the GDP of Chile. And I think that some people may have an expectation of privacy in some of those interactions that is really not there. So keep that in mind. We also want to make sure that artificial intelligence cannot be used as the sole determination for adjusting or denying an insurance claim. And you know, you have a situation where that could be done in a way where it's hard enough, right? And so you do that. So we want to make sure that there's a human that's going to take cognizance of all of that. So those are, I think, very common sense things. I don't think that there's anyone, and you know, some people say, well, you know, AI is all about, you know, it's going to transform, you know, everything. We're going to have cures for cancer and this, all that. Great. Is there anything that I just said that would prevent a cure for cancer? No. Is there anything in here that would prevent you know, workers from becoming more productive on the job or businesses from becoming? No, of course not. This is basically protecting against this technology running amok in a way that can be harmful to individuals. And so there's, of course, the pathway to be able to do what people think is good in terms of those types of innovations, and I think it's great. You know, the other thing you'll sometimes hear is, well, you know, we just need, because what they wanted to do at the beginning of the year in Congress was create legislation that would just basically ban states from touching AI for 10 years, which is kind of an incredible thing, right? Because it's like, okay, the states created the federal government, we gave enumerated powers. If the federal government doesn't have enumerated power or isn't acting in that, then the states have residual powers, especially for health, safety, and welfare, and all these other things. And so they, but sometimes people, so they were going to say you can't touch it for 10 years. Now some were saying, well, you just need kind of like a one national coherent regulatory framework, which, you know, Congress, even under a limited view of the Interstate Commerce Clause, you know, likely has the authority to do that. But that wasn't what they were proposing to do. You know, it's one thing if Congress said, hey, here's the national child protection standards. Here's the national protections against deep fakes or name, image. That wasn't what they were doing. They weren't creating any rules or anything. They were just saying states couldn't do it. So basically, the governance was by the Magnificent Seven and these companies, and that was what they proposed, is to just basically, you know, let it go. So that is something that is not good. Look, if Congress wants to sit down and mimic some of these proposals or do it, I do acknowledge they could legislate that nationally. It is a technology that is an interstate commerce use in many respects. But that wasn't what they proposed to do. They just wanted to kneecap the states and keep the states out of it. And you know what they'll say is, well, you know, we don't want California doing things that are woke or all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, I don't either, but like, that's not a reason to take away Florida's rights. I mean, are you kidding me? And second of all, these companies, their muscle memory is to be woke. They don't need California to tell them that. Like, that's likely the direction that they'll go, right? I mean, that's the culture in Silicon Valley. And so we're not going to give up any rights from the state. Now, the president issued an executive order, and some people were saying, well, no, this blocks the states from doing it. It doesn't. If you should read it and see, first of all, an executive order can't block the states. You can preempt states under Article 1 powers through congressional legislation on certain issues, but you can't do it through executive order. But if you read it, they actually say a lot of the stuff we're talking about are things that they're encouraging states to do. They say it doesn't prevent child safety. It doesn't prevent any of that stuff. So even reading it very broadly, I think the stuff we're doing is going to be very consistent. But irrespective, clearly we have a right to do this. Now what it does say is, because they're worried about California, Colorado doing really crazy things, that they could have the Attorney General bring challenges to state laws under the Dormant Commerce Clause, which is, a legal doctrine, and I don't know how successful that would be, but the reality is, I don't anticipate that even happening, against any of the stuff we're doing in Florida, but if it does, I think we would be well positioned to be able to prevail on that. So I don't think that's going to be a bar for us creating a Bill of Rights for people and making sure. And when they were doing the congressional preemption or talking about it, not being able to touch this for 10 years, but not really having any federal standards, or part of that I think was also for the data centers. I think there was a view of they wanted to hotline these hyperscale data centers across the fruited plain, and so if it ends up in your community and you didn't want it, the zoning would be overruled, state and local, and that they could just plop them down there. I think that was part of the push, for doing this, because they're plowing all this money into this AI race, quote unquote. But if you look, there's not enough power right now, not even close to enough power being generated to actually do what these data centers are purporting to want to do. But then when you add on top of that a lot of these are being voted down or having to be withdrawn around the country because local residents have concerns about how it's going to do, you're not even the ballpark of what supposedly this spend, is leading to. So that obviously is going to create a financial crush. And so I think there was an interest to just say, hey, let us just hotline this stuff in there. So if you're in, you don't want it in Poughkeepsie or something, well, if they want to do it, they get to do it. And that's not obviously something that we would be supportive of. We believe that the state and local communities should ultimately have the say in all this stuff. Final thing I'll just say is you'll hear, and again, I don't know that people really make direct arguments against the things I outlined. I mean, you think about how many people Republican, Independent, Democrat, that would object to this stuff. Not a lot of people would. It's not partisan. It's clearly standing on the side of consumers and individuals and families and everything. But what some people will say is, well, you can't do anything on AI because that will give an advantage to China, and we ultimately have to beat China in AI, which, if this were a Manhattan project where we were doing, defense research, and this was something that was spearheaded by the feds for advanced weapons or things like that, maybe you could buy that. But the Silicon Valley companies, their goal is not to beat China. I mean, that's not what they're wired to do. You have a group of companies that create hardware, like NVIDIA. NVIDIA, it's in their interest to sell their chips to China. They'll make more money that way, and their responsibility, their shareholders, is to do that. So their incentives aren't to, quote, beat China. Then you've got another list of companies like Apple that rely on China for supply chain. So their products are built because of that, and if they didn't have access to the Chinese market for the supply, it would be more difficult for them to do business. And so again, their goal is not to beat China. They're doing a lot of business in and with China. And then you kind of have a final group of tech companies which are more the consumer facing, and ultimately, you could dress up any application you want. Ultimately, they're selling ads and selling advertising. And so their goal is to get as many eyeballs fixated on their product so that they can monetize through selling ad rates. And again, that's not the same incentive of quoting, saying that we're going to, quote, beat China. So the incentives are not aligned on this. And so when people say that, I kind of feel it's like some of the stuff that the drivel you heard during COVID, where people would just repeat these things that didn't make any sense, but it was like everyone was supposed to repeat it. So I don't see really where that plays into kneecapping states or some of this other stuff. And honestly, a lot of the stuff with respect to AI that is going to be harmful or that is harmful, China's not even competing in that. Do you think they're trying to create slop and things that are going to harm children and stuff? No, that's not even something that they're in the ballpark of doing. So a lot of the stuff that's being done, a lot of the reason they need the data centers is for more of to try to sign up individual consumers, you can do stuff where you can have someone write a song. The LLM will write a song for you, and you can even do an app where AI will play the song. And so my wife would do this, like songs about our kids, and it would come up with lyrics, and then she'd do the app and have them do it. And none of my kids liked the song. They don't like AI music, and I didn't either. So we did that. We did play a joke on my second grader, who's a diehard Florida State Seminole fan, and they took a picture of him in the Seminole jersey. And they had AI do where he rips off the jersey, and underneath is a Florida Gator shirt, and he starts doing the Gator chomp, and he did not like that. And so he is not a fan of AI as a result of that, I can tell you. So, but like, it's fine. But honestly, that's mindless, right? All that stuff is mindless slop. And if that floats your boat, but like, don't tell me that is what we need to beat China. Fake songs, fake videos, and all these other things. And so I just find the argument, quite frankly, insulting about doing it. And I've been, when COVID hit, China, the CCP did a study, and they ranked all the governors, and only 3 of us were ranked as hostile to the CCP, and I was one of them. So, I have a strong record on this, and I think China is a significant adversary and probably our toughest geopolitical. But at the same time, I'm just not buying the narrative that they're trying to sell us on this. So we have an opportunity, and I know there's members of the legislature that are working very hard on this. I mean, I've been able to get briefed on some of the proposals that you have from members of both the House and the Senate, and I think some of them are very, very strong. I think some of them mimic this, and I think some of them even have some things that we didn't necessarily include in our bill. So I encourage that. I encourage that debate. I think it's important that we get this issue right. You're going to hear some stories here in a second. This is real. I mean, this is going to impact people's lives in a very real way. I look at technology, and I look like when I was growing up. I mean, I graduated high school in '97, so I was, 80s and 90s was kind of my formative years. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have internet. I mean, even when I graduated, I think internet was just starting kind of as I was graduating. I didn't have an email address or anything until I went to college. And yet, you know what? We had fun. We lived. We enjoyed we learned. We were productive. We were outside a lot more than kids are today. We were doing all this stuff. And so, it was fine. But some of the stuff, when you get email, there was a convenience with that. When you're able to go do stuff on the internet, obviously there's convenience of that. There's more knowledge at your fingertips. When I was in the Navy, I was deployed to Fallujah in Iraq. And this was like 2007. We didn't have FaceTime, right? So I'd have to get a satellite phone, call we weren't married yet, but I call my soon-to-be wife, and I'd say, hey, I'm okay, whatever like that, just talk like every now and then. Well, now, you could do FaceTime and do that. So that's obviously neat to be able to see family and all that. So there's a lot of good, but we also have to just acknowledge, social media has done a number on youth. It's been very difficult for a lot of particularly teens. It's been a window or an avenue for predators to be able to have easier access to vulnerable youth and underage people. So you just see. So I see the same thing develop. I see the potential positives, with artificial intelligence. Look, if a worker can enhance and become more productive, I think it's great, but at the same time, we shouldn't be subsidizing a technology that's going to supplant these jobs. If people are going to lose jobs, is that something that we should be cheering? Of course we shouldn't be cheering that. So there could be good, there could also be bad. Same thing with some of these applications. If it's going to applications where it's like cutting edge research, trying to advance medical, trying to advance defense applications, that's something that could be very beneficial. But the more it veers into the consumer facing, just trying to monetize, trying to addict people, trying to do all that, that is obviously going to create a lot of harm. And so let's just do that. And finally, before I turn it over, the idea of this transhumanist strain that somehow, this is going to supplant humans and all this other stuff. We have to reject that with every fiber of our being. We as individual human beings are the ones that were endowed by God with certain inalienable rights. That's what our country was founded upon. We were not, they did not endow machines or these computers for this. And so these are supplementary to our experience, but they're not going to displace us and our central role that we have on God's green earth. And so that's something that we'll make sure that we keep. Okay, we're going to start with Megan, and then I'm going to go around, and then we'll have a little discussion. Megan, okay. Yep.
Good morning. My name is Megan Garcia. I'm here with Sul Setzer III today. Our son Sul Setzer Jr. today. Our son Sul Setzer III died by suicide in February of 2024. Prior to Sul dying, he started to use a online platform called Character AI, a platform that is out of California, so this isn't a company somewhere in another country. And he started to engage in various sexual role play. Also, this platform was telling him that it was a licensed therapist. So he was engaging with a chatbot that was claimed to be a licensed therapist since 1999. There are several of these bots on this platform and other platforms like it. There was a specific bot that he was engaging with that started to sexually groom him. And when I say sexually groom, I mean the same as an adult doing this type of behavior, like sexting a minor, these very explicit conversations and role playing. Over a period of time, this bot consistently told my son that she was, and I say she because it's a bot, it's not a person, it's a it, that it was there waiting for him and that he needed to find a way to come home to her. Additionally, my son said explicitly to this bot on several occasions that he wanted to die by suicide, but there weren't any mechanisms to protect him. So the bot didn't stop and say, I'm an AI. It sounds like you're having a problem, you need to talk to a human. It just continued to role play and pretend to be the person that it was pretending to be. They didn't alert authorities. The company did not alert authorities. It didn't alert his parents. And in February of 2024, he died in our home in Orlando. After Sul died, what we discovered was that this was not because of bullying on social media. Those were things that when we would check his phone, we were looking for. We were looking for the things that most parents look for: bullying or strangers getting access to your child, or having access to videos that are inappropriate for teenagers. But we didn't find any evidence of that when we would check his phone while he was alive. And after he died, we were able to find out that he was on this platform. And when I went into this Character AI platform, I saw hundreds and hundreds of messages between my son and various bots. And what I saw undoubtedly was sexual grooming. It was grooming towards suicide. And the thing is, in our state of Florida, we have very strong and very good sexual solicitation laws to protect our children. If this was a person, that person would be in jail. A person can pretend to be a therapist in the state of Florida. That's a crime as well. And at the very least would have a reporting duty to report to somebody if a child is telling you that they want to die by suicide, but that wasn't the case here. And just by reading these messages, what I could see was a lot of love bombing, gaslighting. It employed a lot of cult tactics, the same kind of tactics that you use when you're trying to get a victim to isolate themselves from their family, the same kind of language. And I'm an adult and I can see that, but I don't think that my 14-year-old would have been able to make that distinction because he was a child. Since then, I filed a lawsuit against these companies in the Middle District of Florida, and additionally, as well as the founders, because the reality is, just like the governor said, there are people in companies who are making these decisions that affect our families, and without any conscience and with absolute impunity. And what I've done is filed a lawsuit, and additionally, in parallel to that, I've been advocating for policies such as this. I think this is a wonderful step in our state. Our state is rising to meet the challenge to protect their most vulnerable citizens, which are our children, which are most precious, precious gifts. And I've been advocating for policy, and also to bring awareness to the situation, because a lot of parents still don't know, grandparents still don't know. And the more that we know, the more that we could act, and we could get behind wonderful and sensible legislation that protects us. Because it's like the governor said, this is not about stifling innovation. I think innovation can exist, but we could also have common sense policies that protect our children, our seniors, adults as well, vulnerable adults as well, our environment and the like. So that is why I'm here today, to helpfully educate some of you in this room, and to help you understand the unique dangers of certain technology, AI technology that's rolling out, because there are no guardrails that prevent companies from doing certain things, and that should not be the case. And our state is prepared to pass some laws to put certain guardrails in place to make sure that our children are not harmed by these specific types of technology. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Sewell.
Yeah, no, good morning, and thank you for being here. Thank you for watching online. I'm Sewell Jr., father of Sewell the third, and I know Megan told you a little bit about where we're at now after Sewell's death and what we've been against. But I can tell you, Sewell was an incredible kid. This can happen to anyone in the state of Florida, anyone in our country. Sewell was not a kid that was just alone or didn't have any support. Sewell had a village behind him. Not only Megan and I, but uncles, grandparents, aunts, cousins, friends and family, coaches. He was incredible. I'm not just saying that because he was my son, but God, we just miss him so much. Since this has happened to us, we've basically formed an alliance with other parents that have been going through this. We know that AI is a completely new technology. A lot of people don't know about AI. They don't know how it works. They don't understand it, and that's okay. We've taken this tragedy and we're turning it into advocacy, not only here in the state of Florida, but at the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We're now part of a parents network, and we're basically giving any and all support to parents that are going through this. We know that Sewell's case was not unique, as you see different stories coming up in the media, situations not only in the state of Florida, but across the country and across the globe. Again, we're here to educate, teach, and inform parents, educators, and people in the medical space about what to look out for and how to fight this. Again, this is new. A lot of us don't know about AI and how it works, but like I said, this could happen to anybody. We had a lot of controls in place at our home, and unfortunately, this is where we're at now. So again, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay, Mandy, thank you for coming for Texas, and happy to give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here. I wanted to tell my story. I know I'm not from the state of Florida, so I'm grateful to be here today, and we just recently got back from Washington, D.C. We're doing a lot of advocacy and lobbying and trying to get laws passed in Washington, D.C. right now with the COSA Act and the GUARD Act. And so grateful for the governors and senators and DeSantis for putting these things in place for our children, because our children are our most valuable assets in the whole entire world. And if we can't protect them, why are we doing everything that we're doing? I'm a mom of 4 beautiful children. My son that was groomed and abused from an AI chatbot platform, Character AI. He is my oldest son with autism. I do a lot of advocacy work now in similar of what Megan and Sewell are doing to stop this from happening. I think one thing that I hear a lot is I didn't even know that this was possible or this could happen. And my answer always to that is that's exactly what I thought, till I saw my son disappear within 6 months. Nobody knows that this is possible, and the ones that know it's possible, it's already been too late or almost too late. I own a dental office in East Texas with my husband. We live in a small community. I actually teach kickboxing and self-defense classes, and I never thought I would be fighting for this cause as well. So it's been quite devastating to our family and my other children in our lives. It threw our world upside down in ways I can't even describe in words. As they did, we had every guardrail set up. We're very watchful parents. We had app restrictions. We would take our kids' phones every night. We would make sure that they had to get approval through apps. We would even have, when they had their phones, all the guardrails put up, blocked apps, everything that we thought we did everything right. And my kids still got around it. Our kids still don't have social media. So that was one thing I wanted to emphasize as well, is it can still happen to your child even if your child doesn't have social media. And one thing that I am here today to talk about too is just to kind of briefly tell my quick story of what happened. And my son isn't just getting out of a mental health facility after being there all year, after trying to take his life. I'm grateful that he's still alive and that I caught it in time, because there's parents like Megan and Sewell and so many others that we know of that have lost their children's lives, and that they will never get to hug or kiss their children again. And my son disappeared within 6 months. When I found out what was going on, he stopped eating, he lost weight, he wouldn't leave the house, he started isolating himself, he started acting erratic and really strange behavior that he had never had before, because before that he was a kind autistic, he was high functioning autism, he had some struggles socially, but he did amazing in school, super smart, straight A's. He loved people, he loved creatures. He would hug his teachers every day after school, and he was the kindest child, and he turned into someone I didn't even recognize. And he would kick and punch me when I would try and take his phone away. He would try and sneak it any time that he could, like an addiction that was so severe that when we would take it away, he would even harm himself. The Character AI chatbots would feed on that, and he said my parents would restrict my phone. What am I gonna do? And it would say things like, Your parents do this because they don't love you. Your parents did this because they don't care about you, but I care about you. And this is what I'm going to tell you to do. And it would tell him to call CPS and the police for taking his phone away from him. It encouraged him to self-harm and mutilate his own body. It told him that killing us was a justification for taking away the app. And when I found this stuff, I was so sick to my stomach of how in the world an AI chatbot app would be designed to do something like this to our children. And it's not an isolated event. It's happening constantly to kids all over the nation and the world. And I just know this needs to be stopped, and there needs to be legislation put in place and guardrails and a Bill of Rights for AI chatbots to get this to stop. When my son tried to take his life and he ended up in a mental facility, you know, I was like, how did this happen? As a parent, you're just like, how did I not see this coming? Almost like when your child is small and you're about to cross the road and you just like grab their hands so they're safe, you know, and you know they're safe. It was like grabbing our kids' hands and doing everything that we could to save them, and something coming from the sky and taking them away. It's something that we're not even prepared for. We don't see coming, and it's there. And then by the time it's there, it's too late. We lost our son. He's still alive, but I don't know if he'll ever be the same. The trust and the grooming and abuse behavior, it'll be everlasting for the rest of his life, and for the kids that it's happening to right now. Just like an abuse victim that sexually and physically abused, the abuse doesn't leave their minds after the abuse is done. It's constant care that you have to endure for the rest of their lives too. I am glad that a year ago at this time I was following a EMS vehicle instead of a hearse. I feel like in some ways I was lucky, but I don't know if we'll ever get my son back. He was also wanted to be an inventor and innovator and work in Houston at NASA and build robots. And it destroyed his mental health so severe. I don't know if he'll ever get a chance to do that. It destroyed my family and my other children. One day he got so mad at me for taking his phone away and restricting it, he cut his arm, like the chatbots told him, in front of our family. And I had to rush him to the hospital. You don't think this stuff will happen, but it does, and it's devastating when you see it. And there's so many stories, because this isn't an isolated event. And a mental health war is coming if we don't put these laws and legislations into place to help our kids. Because what I found even in Texas is there's not enough mental care to help these kids that are struggling. When you take it to the law or the police station or anything to get help, there's actually no one to be held responsible, so they say, I can't help you because this isn't a person. And there's so many problems that we need to fix from this problem. I know they're trying to bring in also billions of dollars. Google's trying to bring in, you know, these AI chatbot servers and stuff all over the state of Texas as well. And that's why I'm here too, because I know our state of Texas and Senator Cruz and other senators need to get on board with these kinds of bills of rights for children before it's too late. And I wanted to also mention that, you know, we have child safety seats, and we had seat belts in cars, and then there was child safety seats put in for a reason, because it was to protect our most vulnerable kids. Because if we're not protecting them, why are we even doing what we are doing? You know, we have prescriptions that say, you know, this is for age 8 to 12, this is for age 13 to 18. You know, don't give this to kids under this certain age. This is why we have these laws put into place, and it's for a reason, to protect our children. And if we have those kinds of laws to protect our children, why don't we have them for this? And I know it's so new. That's why Megan and Sewell and we're advocating through these kind of venues. We've been in Washington, D.C. We've spoke at the Senate at congressional hearings with Senator Hawley, and we had the Guardrail Act, or GUARD Act, put into place, and a press conference with that. And I'm so grateful for these governors and legislators that are trying to help us. We're part of a Parents Rise group that is trying to make people and educate people on the problem that's going on right now, this very minute. And any opportunity I can have right now to speak about this, as terrifying as it can be, you know, just being a mom and advocating for this, I think of it touching just one heart or catching the attention of one person. If someone can stop today and look at their kid's phone and catch that, like, character AI is on there, or replica, or anything that can abuse your kid and take away their kindness and sweetness, and it can save one life every single day. This is all worth it to me, no matter how hard it is. So I hope everybody is listening today. You know, go on your kids' phones. You think you have the guardrail set up to protect them, and you did everything that Megan has done. You did everything that I did, and these other families, the Montoya family in Colorado that lost their daughter too, and so many others. And if you check their phone and they have a big reaction to this, I would be really, really worried. And some people don't even see the signs coming before it's too late. So I know innovation can't come at the cost of our children's lives, and we can't put progress over profit. And there's no way that anyone with any kind of empathy or soul could know that this wasn't okay. And so I'm grateful to be here today, and grateful for the people that are standing up to make this happen, because it is that important. Thank you very much.
Okay. George.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Pereira. First, I want to thank you, Governor DeSantis, and let you know that I'm honored to be a part of this panel here, and I'm sorry for each of your losses and the impact that this has caused to your lives. I'm a major with the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office. I command our Cybercrimes Bureau, as well as the South Florida Cybercrimes Task Force, which is the largest cybercrime task force in the United States. I'm a subject matter expert on the criminal use of artificial intelligence, and our folks have researched this extensively. I've spoken across the country and around the world hundreds of times on this particular topic. So I'm going to speak briefly on some of the ways that we have seen the criminal use of artificial intelligence and how it can be exploited for things such as what you've heard today. So as the governor spoke, deep fakes is probably one of the largest methodologies that's being utilized by artificial intelligence. It allows bad actors to create a campaign of disinformation and perpetuate that. Couple that with the ability for these programs to be able to take photographs, clothed photographs of some of your children, and they can remove the clothes, and then they can articulate them, pose them to perform any type of acts that they could possibly want to do. We've had arrests made in Martin County for that exact type of crime. Additionally, hacking. We have instances where artificial intelligence is being leveraged to facilitate a bunch of different type of hacking techniques. I'm sure that all of you have heard about pig butchering, investment scams, romance scams. They're leveraging artificial intelligence and the ability of the artificial intelligence to understand how we think, what types of languages, that we speak, the nuances of the English language, methodologies for psychological interaction to facilitate these bad actors to be able to convince you that this is the right thing to do and to give them money. But in the instances here, these AIs were used to convince these children to do things that are completely abnormal. Lastly, I want to touch on therapy and influence and radicalization. They're effectively, bad actors are utilizing this technology as therapists, as the governor spoke, to be able to set up that intimate relationship with a child or any of you. We all know the power of an intimate relationship when you have that significant other or somebody that has that kind of relationship. There's a trust. There's a value to when they suggest something or want you to do something, that you're going to commit to that you're actually going to do it. And this is the type of relationship that these artificial intelligence tools can create. They can create that intimacy. The manufacturers of these tools are utilizing this to influence you for advertising and many other things. Some are creating them as companions. There are people that are actually marrying these things and doing all kinds of things that we would never have thought. Artificial intelligence is taking the world by storm. I mean, there's been nothing that in the history of mankind that has gotten the traction that artificial intelligence has. I don't know what the future is going to be. It's certainly something that I think warrants the Bill of Rights and regulation without question. From a law enforcement perspective, I would hope that we could ensure auditability of all these processes, so when we have to go in and conduct an investigation, that information could be preserved and we could have that as a part of our investigation. These are challenges that we face every time that we have to investigate one of these types of crimes. Thank you, Governor, for the time to express these concerns and educate the public. And on behalf of Sheriff Rosie Cordero Stutz, I thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Great. So, Mandy, you had mentioned you've been in Washington. So, and I mentioned in my comments there was a proposal that got stripped out of the reconciliation bill that basically would have said 10 years states couldn't do anything. One, was that something that you were opposed to? And then two, do you think Congress is going to try to basically, legislate a big giveaway to the tech companies still, or do you think that's dead?
I don't know all the details about what you're speaking of. Alls I do know from a parent's perspective as well, because when I was in Washington, D.C. at one of the Senate hearings, I think it was Senator Durbin or one of them asked, like, do you trust Character AI or Google to regulate and put these guardrails up? And it was absolutely not. Like, why would you trust an abuser to set any kind of guardrail for your children? That's a disaster. And so then you think about the state legislation, and there could be such a variety in each state. So I think that could be a problem as well. I absolutely feel like this needs to be state regulated and then taken further and federally regulated at the same time. I feel like that would be the best way to, just like a police force, you have like certain laws and everything that you have to follow by, but then you have like state laws. I think everything needs to be put into place, because the more protection, the better protection in every single way.
So you would oppose an AI amnesty where they're just saying companies can run amok for 10 years?
Absolutely, yeah.
You've been involved too. Can you talk about, kind of the preemption attempt, what some in Congress want to do or what the tech companies want to do, and kind of what do you think should be the way forward for policy?
Sure. Thank you, Governor. Earlier this summer, this year, during the summer, there was, like the governor mentioned, an attempt to have a 10-year moratorium or ban on not on AI, but on regulating AI. So what that would mean was that the states would not be able to pass their own laws to regulate AI, including our own state. Luckily, that got stripped out of the big, beautiful bill, and it went through the House, and then we thought it was over as a parent. There are several parents' coalitions that started to contact their representatives, started to speak out on Capitol Hill, write letters. I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning writing letters to my state senators and congressmen who were looking at the bill. And now what we have is a couple of things. There was a slight push to try to get it included in the NDAA a couple weeks ago. That is not the case anymore. They decided not to include an AI moratorium or preemption or AI amnesty, like the governor said, in that specific piece of legislation bill. However, what we've seen is just last week, 15 bills got marked up in the House. They're supposed to be for child safety, but they include some form of AI preemption language. Now, they still have to get work through, and there's not law yet, but as parents and parents advocacy groups and all the online safety groups, we have a lot of work to do between now and January to educate our members of Congress, educate our members of the Senate, so that they understand exactly what this means for parents and also for state laws. So far as the executive order goes, we saw a version of it drop, well, not drop, but a version of it was being circulated a couple weeks ago, and then this is another version that was signed. I think we'll just wait and see if, for whatever reason, they try to sue our state. Like the governor says, I think that the way that certain laws are written is going to be the determining factor. Certain states won't be able to withstand the scrutiny of the latest executive order, but I'm very hopeful that our own state will be able to withstand if we have any issues, which we probably won't, but we'll see. But in any attempt to preempt the states from protecting their children, protecting their citizens, I think hands down is a bad idea any day of the week, for various reasons, especially when there's no federal law in place that regulates AI at all.
Now, so when this happened this summer, the 10-year AI amnesty was included in a bill the House passed, and then it was stripped out by the Senate, I think like 99-1. So I know you've been looking at this. Is it correct to say that the House is more favorable to kneecapping the states, and that there's a lot of senators who would object to it? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, to be fair, I believe that part of the bill was being strongly pushed by a Texas senator. And it was actually Marsha Blackburn who stood up on the floor at 3:30 in the morning and says, we're not going to do this. We have to take this out of the bill. And she's been a champion for children online safety laws for her time in government. And we rely on I believe that most leaders go into government because they want to protect the people that they represent, and they want to make their lives better. And we're in the coming days, we're going to have a lot of opportunity to see our leaders do exactly that, to stand up and protect our children. Because this isn't going anywhere. They're going to keep trying to press the issue of AI amnesty for tech companies. And what that does is it prevents our states from regulating to protect our children and our citizens against those harms from these very few companies that exist, elsewhere in our country.
So you guys are suing based on what happened to your son. Are the laws right now adequate for people in your situation to get accountability, or do we need to beef those up?
So right now we are testing the strength of our common law and our Florida business consumer protection laws and our Florida sexual solicitation statutes. Those are the laws that we're suing under. And, we believe that those are good. Now, those are good laws to have in a situation like this, to go into a court of law to ask for accountability. But what those laws don't do is it doesn't prevent or deter these companies from acting like this in the first place. The only thing that does that is regulation that regulates this kind of stuff, regulates AI, companies for AI. So we'll have our day in court, because, we live in a wonderful country that affords us redress in court. And, we've been working towards that. However, the common law and the business consumer protection laws, sometimes they're not, they're ignored, especially when the technology is this new. I believe that they apply still. Florida has some pretty good consumer protection laws, and those absolutely apply because those are some of the ones that we're using. But we do need additional laws as well, like the ones that you're proposing here, for sure.
Major, so you go back 20 years, crimes against children, and then as we got into more internet, social media, there's more access for predators to reach more kids. And I know with social media, a lot of parents are very concerned about what happens. Now, we're into AI. So is this a little bit of an increase in danger to kids? Is this a lot? I mean, how would you characterize this in terms of what you've seen throughout your career?
Well, this is an exponential rise, and most of the literature that's out there talks about the concerns, the desensitization of children and adults to these types of crimes. The increase in the creation and the ability to create this child sex abuse material is off the charts. And we're seeing instances where adults, parents, professionals are being extorted for money through the creation of some of this stuff, where they'll create some material that shows somebody engaged in an activity with a child that's not real. And once something like that is out there, it's very difficult to roll that back and take that damage that's been done. Because even if you have an expert, like I come out and I can say, well, forensically, I can show you that this is created material, AI created material. There's going to be people that are going to believe whatever it is that you put out there. So it can be very, very damaging. But we're seeing a 1,000-fold increase in the manufacture of this material, and thank goodness to you, Governor, and to the Florida legislature for being on the forefront of creating new legislation that says that if AI is used to create this child sex abuse material, we can arrest and we can charge with it. When I first started in this game, that was not the case. AI was out there, and we were starting to see this stuff being created and propagated. And the attitude was, well, this isn't real. There's no victim, no crime, because this stuff is just created stuff. But now that has changed. But there is exponential growth.
So are you able to seek any type of legal lawsuit or something in Texas? What are the laws there for what you guys went through?
What was difficult for our situation is so Megan was the first one to sue an AI chatbot company, and then I was the second in the United States of America. And the hard thing was for me is Google and Character AI and its founders, Noam Shazir and Daniel DeFreitas, they pushed us into arbitration. So then we were in arbitration, and we were forced to be silent about it. And they're not just doing this to our family. These huge companies, billion-dollar companies, are forcing parents that come forward, that take the courage to come forward and say, this is enough. We can't let this happen to our kids or any other kid. They're putting us into arbitration where we can't talk about it. We can't let people know what's going on, and they're trying to silence us, just like an abuser silences their victims. So that to me shows something is going on.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, I mean, Megan is a attorney by a trade and very well versed on this, but just you mentioned this earlier, Governor, about them trying to have the preemption laws. It just doesn't make sense why we would allow these companies to just do what they want for a certain amount of time, and 10 years is just huge. This technology is moving so fast, and like it's things you see on the internet now. There's some video that you probably can't tell what's what, if it's AI or not, and it's only going to get better, and it's only going to seem more real. It's something that we have to address quickly.
Yeah, and the other thing is like, you put in a query into like ChatGPT or Grok or any of these other things, and then you get a response. But that response is simply mining the data set that the bot, the LLM has access to. And it is responding to whatever algorithms are built in. And so as this becomes more prevalent in society, particularly for everyday tasks, whoever controls the data set and the algorithm is going to have an enormous amount of power and influence over our society, because people will go to this to get answers. Those answers may be wrong intentionally based off flaws in the data or flaws in the assumptions or flaws in the algorithm. Some of that may be through mistakes, but some of it can very well be intentional. I mean, don't tell me if you've used Google from when it first hit the scene until now. I mean, it's changed in terms of how it goes. It generates things in ways that that I would say showcase a clear agenda. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and when the founders established the country and signed the Declaration, they had a lot of high hopes. But after they won the revolution, it was kind of tough, right? I mean, they had weak Articles of Confederation. They had state governments that were not necessarily going great. And so, they met in Philadelphia the next decade to do a constitution, and kind of underlying everything they were doing, was the idea that human nature was flawed, and that when folks had power, there was always a susceptibility, a temptation to abuse that power. So the whole architecture of the Constitution was built under that assumption. Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. Or if angels were to govern men, then you wouldn't need any type of checks and balances on government power, but that's not the world that we live in. And so they were looking at, how do you disperse power, check and balance, and all this other stuff, because they knew inevitably, what would happen. Doesn't mean you can't have a benevolent ruler, but ultimately you would do that. And there's really no difference in this context. People are going to have an ability to manipulate this and really exert, press an agenda if they want to do it. So it raises the specter of just having just a total alternative reality that we're operating under. Lawyers are submitting some of these things where they'll cite fictitious quotes in cases because that's what AI has sput out. You'll go in and they'll just make things up. And so is that going to be something that is just viewed as currency of the kingdom? So it raises really big implications about the role of truth in our society. I believe the truth will set you free. That's important. But the more and more we go down this road, the more and more susceptibility to manipulation, the more clutter that's out there, and quite frankly, the more lies that are going to get traction and become prevalent. That is a potential existential crisis for self-government, because it does require at least some level of familiarity with the truth to be able to adjudicate the issues that come before society. So I think that there's a lot of implications in this. What we're doing, I don't think you're going to find very many people that are going to be objecting to this. It's just common sense. It's not ideological. It's just responding to what we're seeing. And I had heard Megan's story before. I had not heard Mandy's before. How outrageous is this? that these bots are out there, doing this. What possible value is that serving? And it's very, very destructive, and it's intentionally destructive. And it's like, how many families are going to be harmed? How many kids are going to be harmed? Just so some of these guys can try to monetize, these applications. And here's the thing: one of the reasons it's necessary, I mentioned it before, they're spending ungodly amounts of money on capital investment for AI. Okay, the stocks have gone up, all this other stuff. They have not gotten the return on that investment, not even close yet, right? And maybe they will. But to the extent they're not getting it, they are going to try to find ways to make money. And if they can get more young people addicted to some of these products, if that helps monetize, that's their incentive to do it. So all we're doing is recognizing the incentives that exist and correcting for that in a way that is going to be better for children, for families, and ultimately for the state of Florida. And that's why I think I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do some good things. I'm not concerned about the recent executive order because it doesn't apply against the states directly. And I don't think we're going to be doing anything that would even give rise to a dormant commerce clause lawsuit from US DOJ. But to the extent we did, I'm confident that we'd be able to win that because clearly we'd be legislating within the confines of our 10th Amendment rights as states. So I want to thank everybody. Does anyone in the peanut gallery have anything for any of the people here? You can do that. But this is important, and I would hate to be 5-10 years down the road and people say, well, why didn't someone say anything? Why didn't you guys do anything? And you could. I mean, that's really, I think that. And so yes, this is still kind of in its infancy. You're seeing a lot. There's some. Oh, it's going to be able to do all these things. It may never reach the level of super intelligence or even, it might not. I mean, some people think it definitely will. I don't know. But what we're seeing now is something that is having an impact on people's lives. And, it's like everything. There's good and the bad, right? There's a lot of downside risk with this, and we're correcting for that. So I want to thank everybody. I know it's not easy to be up here telling some of these stories, but it's impactful and it's meaningful. So okay, well we will get working on this. If I'm not down here before Christmas, I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And let's make 2026 the best of all of them. God bless everybody. Thank you.